The Cult token for the DAO launched recently. Sounds kind of funky, right? The Cult DAO. I went through and did a deep dive on this to get a better understanding of what their mission is, how their tokenomics work, how you could use this to potentially make money, and do they solve some of the issues of DAOs? Because you could create a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. You can think of it as a kind of like a mutual fund, but for like VCs or like angel fund where they raise money and they take that money and they invest into things that they believe in. That is effectively how this is structured, but then you get potential issues, right? If I did a DAO, raised money, and then the idea is that the decision making is decentralized. But if I raised it and I am the largest holder, I could just vote on my own shit. I mean, if some peon has fucking 10,000, who gives a shit? I own most of the supply, right? So how do some of these things get taken care of? And the other thing is, if something comes forward that, like, say I don't own the majority of tokens and something comes forward that I don't like or don't want it, well, I can just change shit in the background. Right? Maybe I have the admin keys. Maybe I'll just pull the liquidity. Maybe I'll just pull liquidity on everybody and extract all the value I can. So how does the DAO take care of this? How does the Cult DAO take care of this? We're going to get into all that in this video. But first, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it's good to freaking see you. Anybody who wants to support the channel, there's a link down below. Appreciate you if you do. There's shop.letstalkpeds. There's Ethereum address. There's other social. If you enjoy the content, then definitely check out some of the other links down below. So first, let's touch on the mission, and then we can get into some of the tokenomics of how it actually works, and then the security piece of it that we were talking about. So what is like the Cult DAO, right? I went through and read this. I actually read most of this twice, and went through their FAQs and everything else I could find on their website, as well as their like all the information in here, but this is just regurgitation from their white paper. And what I noticed as I was reading through this is that the author or authors of this went through and they are in tune with a lot of what is happening right now in society. What do I mean by that? That they're in tune with a lot of what is happening in society. There is a tremendous amount of censorship that is taking place in society. There's a lot of pandering. There's a lot of fear among people to stand up for what they believe in because they don't want to get canceled. There's a lot of apathy for life because of drug use that is forced upon people because they're not taught how to actually move forward and be outside of the system, to think for themselves, to get outside of how money works, so to speak. And Big Pharma is brought up in here, the censorship is brought up in here, the lack of luster or passion in most people's lives, the inflation is brought up in terms of a lot of people. When you can think of inflation, and they don't say this specifically in this, but this is how I think about inflation. Inflation is effectively a tax on the stupid, or a tax on the people who don't own assets, right? Because what happens when inflation happens and you own an asset, right? This duplex here, what happens when inflation happens? It's good for me, right? Prices go up. What happens when you own other assets and inflation happens? Same thing. So what is inflation? A tax on people who don't own assets. Who does not own assets? Right? The poor people. Those people are the ones who are paying the tax. And touches on all this stuff, and I was like, "Oh, this is good." These authors or author was in tune with the underlying like pain or sense. I got the idea of reading through this that it's like a rap, right? Where if you think of like, and I'm not into music, but there's an idea with rap that it touches on things that are happening, right, in society. Or, I mean, now it's just talking about drugs and bitches and fucking money or wasting money, and you know what I mean, going to club and all that shit. But there's an idea back in the day that they was touching on things that were important at the time, and that is the essence of what I got through this. That the key points here could be taken and put into like a song that would be compelling for a lot of, very popular for a lot of people. But where does this like lead us to, right? Like all this stuff is good and all that kind of thing, but then where does this lead us to? That leads us to page number 6 here, where we talk about the tokenomics. But before we get into the tokenomics, let's understand the pieces of this. You're going to have two parties, right? You're going to have like the average person who owns Cult, and then you're going to have something that they call the guardians. Guardians just like the top 50 holders. So if somebody is a top 50 holder, they have an address, an Ethereum address that holds, you know, 50, and they classifies them as the top 50. That means they own a bunch of, I think the maximum supply of this was like 2/3 of a billion tokens, right? So that's a large amount, right? And the essence in terms of the tokenomics is to set up something that is hyper deflationary. So every single transaction is taxed 0.4%. And this tax goes into the Treasury DAO. So that's kind of like the VC fund that we were talking about. And this just collects money. So every single day there's transactions. I looked up, actually we can do it right now, not Instagram, but if you want to check out Instagram, you're welcome to. Info Uniswap, right? So we can go to Uniswap and actually take a look at this to see what type of volume Cult has. So let's see here. I don't know why it's not coming up, but they've burned over 1.7 billion tokens so far. As this is slowly filling up the treasury, right? As people transact, the treasury fills up. And then this is where the group of people that they call the top 50 holders actually take their power, so to speak, and they put proposals forwards that are funding projects that have 3 things in them. They are going to support decentralization, support the reduction of centralization, kind of like the same thing almost, and supports a noble cause. So the top 50 holders of Cult can put forth proposals that support those 3 things to the community to vote on. Now, we're going to intertwine some of the safety or security stuff here, because of what I mentioned earlier. Well, I could just put it forward and then fund myself. Well, there's a couple things here. The maximum amount of funding to whatever I would propose is 13 ETH worth of value. So this 13 ETH worth of value, if it gets accepted and approved, gets funded. And you can see right here, proposals can be put forward and approved without limit. They just will not be paid until the treasury has been replenished to 15.5 ETH of cult, right? So they need that value. Every 15.5 ETH raised, if a proposal is or once has been approved, treasury will auto send 13 ETH to an investee wallet and send 2.5 ETH of cult to a burn address, right? So you have every single transaction, there's a 0.4% tax that goes into the treasury. The top 50 owners can propose different ways of spending that money. The community votes on them. And a cool part about this is that if you're in the top 50 addresses, you're not allowed to vote. You can propose things, you can be the proponent of them, but you're not actually allowed to vote. In order to vote, you have to be not in the top 50, and you have to have your cult staked. So you can actually stake cult and earn money. To understand that, let's come down here. So the investee company, so say there is a proposal for a project to be funded with the 13 ETH, right? It gets approved. What happens? Well, the investee company sells their token for cult at burn and distribution rate of agreed. 50% is sent to burn wallet and 50% is gifted back to decult owners. Okay, so let's understand this. A proposal is put forth, the community votes on it, it gets approved, it gets funded with 13 ETH, right? Worth of value of cult. Remember, all the funding in the treasury DAO is cult, right? So then they're taking cult and they're selling that, which is creating another 4% tax. So that they're taking this money out and they're creating another 4% tax, auto refilling the treasury, right? Which is going to be deflationary because of the burn function. 2.5 ETH worth of value of cult is sent to a burn address. Now, that 13 that was sold for there's one that's proposed, I heard, I don't know where it is or how to find it yet, but it was proposed to purchase Pulse Chain. Right? That 13 ETH worth of cult will be swapped, assuming that went through, will be swapped for Pulse. When that is swapped for Pulse, they have Pulse, right? And then what happens is there's a distribution phase. So if you are investing into a fund of some sort, say you put in $1 million, and the fund will redistribute some type of earnings back to you, where they might require some type of vesting schedule where they only allow you to take out a certain amount at a certain time or something like that. Well, there's a vesting schedule for this specific section. So the amount of Pulse that is collected is distributed on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, however, up to a maximum of 18 months. So the 13 ETH buys Pulse, creating another 0.4% tax that goes back into the DAO. They hold Pulse, and then like, okay, on a monthly basis for 12 months, that 13 ETH worth of cult is going to get now sold back into cult again, and that creates another transaction to fill the DAO. And where does that cult go? So that 13 ETH worth of cult that purchased Pulse, now that Pulse is being sold back to cult, that is being distributed at 50-50 between a burn wallet and 50% is going back to the stakers who are going into the protocol and actually voting on this stuff. So this is a very interesting setup. This is a very interesting setup. Now, I like that. I like the idea of this. This is super interesting, and especially when looked into the security side. So the cult DAO has been audited, which is great. The liquidity, so they're funding liquidity on probably Uniswap. The liquidity is locked. So the liquidity in the system, if you come out with something and you are able to control the liquidity and push up prices, and then as you get in new people, you just dump the fucking shit on their heads and pull liquidity out, then you're able to extract a lot of value from the system. So liquidity is locked. It can't be touched. There's also no people, the developers or anybody involved, there's nothing can be changed in the DAO. It is what it is and it stays that way. The keys on the back end are burnt, and all the contracts involved are just locked. There's nothing that can be upgraded or changed in any of the contracts or anything in the DAO. I like this. This is awesome. It's been audited. The liquidity is locked. So you can't dump on people's heads. There's no admin keys on here because they're burnt. Contracts are locked. This is good. I like this. I like this. I think this is super interesting. I don't know how it's going to play out in going into the future, but if you think about this as a investment fund, like one of the largest hedge funds out there is an investment fund, so to speak. They just have different objectives, what they're trying to achieve. So one of the largest hedge funds out there is one that was founded by Ray Dalio. And when you think of the investment fund extracts value for the investors, right, by trying to find inefficiencies in the market and undervalued opportunities in the market. And then they seize that, and then they're trying to make the market more efficient, right? Well, the idea behind Cult is similar to that, except for two big things. When you run the largest hedge fund in the world, the staffing needs to get paid. The offices rent needs to get paid. All of the overhead associated with that, including the software, the licensing of different software, all of that, the research is paid for, all that needs to get paid for. And that comes out of the gains. That comes out of the progress. That doesn't happen with the DAO. This DAO specifically, how this one's structured. But it's still able to yield the results in terms of the gains on this, right? Maybe these proposals could invest into utter trash, right? But in order to be, let me actually pull that up real quick. How do the proposals work, right? In order to be able to put a proposal in here, there's several things that need to be put forth. As we mentioned, to fight against centralization, the further cause is decentralization and direct benefit a noble cause, which this noble cause, you're like, what does that mean? Well, it would be defined by like the community, so to speak. What should be contained in the proposal? So this is what needs to be in the proposal, right? Because you can't just be like, okay, well, I'm going to fund my sister's like, yeah, fucking project and we're going to split it post afterwards or whatever, right? This is what needs to be here. The total supply of the investee protocol token. So wherever it's going to be invested in needs to be public. And the total supply, that the percentage of the total supply being offered in return for 13 ETH investment. The tokenomics, how is this other project set up? How is this furthering things with their token? The audit of the token and any contracts, if built, great. So this is not going to be incentivized to invest into projects that don't already have an audit done. This is great in any contracts. And then the burn and distribution plan. So that is that 0 to 18 months that I mentioned. how that 13 ETH that is invested into this other thing is then reconverted and distributed to the owners, right? If you make a fund and you have all this money coming in and then you make investments and those investments pay you, how do you distribute that, right? That's effectively what that is. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to take a second, press the share button, send this out to somebody else who's interested in this kind of stuff. Super interesting proposal. Just for clarity here, I do not own any Cult DAO. I may purchase some, but I do not currently own any whatsoever. Maybe I will down the road potentially, but it is something to check out, to continue to learn about the crypto space in general. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. We're at a pivotal time in history where we're at the cusp right here. We're right here in the adoption of crypto before it starts to explode. Over the next 5 years, you will not be able to recognize where we were at in crypto. You can check out that video too, where I do a deep dive on the research on where we currently are in the adoption curve and where we're going. Over by 2027, we're going to be over 50% of the world population in crypto. Don't believe me? Go check out the video. You can check out Twitter as well. I'm active over there. Instagram, my other YouTube channel should be coming up here around fitness related stuff. You can check that out. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon. Peace.